Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is on a much-deserved week-long vacation, so I will be with you for the next 5 days, and I am thrilled to be a part of this very program. I'm not so thrilled about the news that I see every morning, though. That's always something that's a lot less exciting. Case in point would be what's going on with all the protesting, and then actually what a lot of people, at least from the Republican National Convention, can confirm is also rioting, is also looting, is also a lot of dangerous, violent things taking place. Certainly what happened in Portland is yet another demonstration of some of the problems that may exist when you just let things other than peaceful protesting go unchecked. When you have a national convention, as the Democrats did a couple weeks ago, and you don't mention the word looting or rioting at all, if this doesn't come up, if you don't have any discussions about any of the negative things that are happening on the streets, and you only talk about the positive causes or the valuable things that you believe in that are being peacefully demonstrated against, you do an incredible disservice to our country as a whole. That's kind of what the entire Republican National Convention was about, that there are multiple layers to a lot of things that get discussed in just one way on one side. I thought this was tremendously interesting and very disturbing, actually. There is audio now. It's been out for a little while. I think it first circulated on social media, of the protesters in Portland celebrating the shooting of someone there, celebrating the murder of an individual there who happened to be a demonstrator from the far right, who happened to be a demonstrator on the other side of the conversation. I don't think anyone on any side of this, other than maybe these people at this rally that are celebrating this in this moment, wants to see this. What we saw in Kenosha, Wisconsin was horrible as well. There's no need to say that one thing is okay and another thing isn't. I want to be crystal clear here. You don't want people killing each other at protests and at rallies, and that should be an easy thing to state. And you definitely do not want to hear people celebrating those types of things at the rally as they're happening, at the protest, at whatever you want to call it, at the looting and rioting. But here it is. Here is audio circulating on social media with a bit of cleaning up by yours truly, because there's some F-bombs that drop in this thing. But it's just surreal to me that we are in a world now in which people can celebrate this kind of thing.
And tonight, I just got word. The person who died was a Patriot person. Yeah. He was a Nazi. Our community held its own and took out the trash. I am not going to shed any tears over a Nazi.
This is surreal. I can't understand how we're in this place as a country. And then I know that the way in which the interview would go, the way in which the conversation would go, you bring on anyone right now in the Democratic Party and you ask them, why did this happen? Why is there protesting in which someone is killed and then the protesters celebrate the death of an individual? This is far from peaceful protesting, to say the very least about it. And someone from a side of the political aisle would go on TV and say it's all Trump's fault somehow. And that actually is happening. And I'm not even going to play some of the audio I found of that because it's ridiculous. But this is the exact problem you get when no one can go out and condemn very specifically, very forcefully, outside of the president of the United States, outside of people on the right. No one can condemn and attack the terrible, terrible outcomes that are occurring on the streets that are not the protesting, not the peacefulness that so many of us are celebrating. I know President Biden has now, or excuse me, wow, that was former Vice President Biden. I do not want it to be the other thing. Former Vice President Biden saying that he feels that this is now a problem after some polling numbers came out, after some data between the president, between Biden comes out, and it becomes very interesting to me to see the shift, the pivot in conversations, not because of the violence on the streets, not because of the horrible things that happen, but because maybe polling is starting to indicate that people aren't exactly psyched with the idea that this can all be forgiven. They're not exactly thrilled with the concept that, hey, we don't care about that. Hey, that's not a big deal. Oh, and also, by the way, and this is interesting to me, and I don't know if this comes from the changes occurring now in any kind of polling and the changes occurring in betting odds for who will win the election in November, but Joe Biden will also start campaigning again in person, which I found tremendously interesting. And actually, while watching yesterday, one of my favorite, at times, favorite interviewer, Other times, maybe not so much. But Chris Wallace really grilled the campaign manager for Joe Biden on a lot of these issues because it's a stark contrast from what he's been saying very recently. And I'm going to let Chris do a lot of this conversation because they an excellent job in both playing audio from Biden from, say, a week ago or so, where he said that he would not be campaigning in person and he absolutely could win the election via just a digital presidential campaign, and how that pivoted and changed. And one of my other favorite things, and you hear this all the time, is that you'll trust the science. It could be a Democratic governor. It could be any individual. They'll say the science is what matters. Apparently, they can pick and choose when the science has changed, because I haven't heard a lot of conversations in a week that have dramatically changed our impression of what's going on from a COVID-19, from a coronavirus standpoint. And yet you go from, having digital elections to in-person campaigns because you feel like it. I'm not really sure. But here's part of that audio with Chris Wallace.
Just 1 week ago, Joe Biden said that he was going to continue his very limited in-person campaigning.
Can you win a presidential election from home?
We will. We're going to follow the science, what the scientists tell us.
Has the science changed that dramatically in 1 week?
That is a touchdown of a question, by the way, real quick. That's a home run. Has the science changed that dramatically in 1 week? Let's see what the campaign manager for Joe Biden thinks.
Those two things are not mutually exclusive, Chris. From the outset, we have followed the science. We have followed the public health guidelines. We have held socially distant, responsible events with people wearing masks, with people taking the proper precautions. Obviously,
but answer my question,
very
Kate.
clear contrast.
He said a week ago that he could win the election from home. He was asked that. He said, we'll follow the science. Now he's going to go on a big campaign trip.
That's just disingenuous, Chris. He said we will win by following the science. That's what we've done from the outset.
Is that really disingenuous, by the way? Didn't he ask a question, can you really win a campaign online and not having rallies in person? And didn't Biden say, yes, you can? I don't think that Chris Wallace is wrong here. I also love the fact that at times he has to kind of beg people to answer his actual questions because they're not answered. And actually, here's another piece of that audio where they continue to talk about this. And Chris Wallace does a great job of begging his interviewee to actually answer any of the questions he's asking and not just pivot to how it's all Trump's fault, because that is entirely the messaging that is going to be attempted from this point on and has already been attempted for a while, but all the way to November, is that any problem whatsoever, whatever it is the fault of one President Trump. This is actually very similar to what at a time the left complained a lot about was a way in which President Barack Obama was blamed for everything. Now it's happening to Trump, but this is completely different. This is totally okay. Let's hear one more question.
No leading scientist that I've seen is talking about shutting down the country again. So why would the vice president even raise that possibility?
Well, let's ask ourselves why we're in a situation where we would have to, Chris, because Donald Trump has failed to contain this virus.
See, he wants to talk a little bit now about how Joe Biden has been talking a little too much about how in order to respond effectively to coronavirus, you got to go back into a world where things get shut down. And as Chris Wallace points out, yeah, no one from the scientific community is saying specifically that. What are you talking about? And the answer is it's Trump's fault.
Chris, nurses and people on the front lines.
I'm not trying to.
Chris, you asked me a question.
No, I'm asking. The question I'm asking is a very specific one. It isn't about Trump's response. It's why is Joe Biden talking about shutting down the country again? That's the question I asked.
But it is about Trump's response, Chris, because why are we here? Why are we in a position where
that isn't the question I'm asking.
I just love it. I laugh so much at this because it's crazy. It's crazy right now to think about, and also how many people have pointed out that during the entire Democratic National Convention, there was absolutely no mention of looting, rioting, violence, any of the things that are a problem. This is such a pick and choose your conversation type of campaign. It is surreal. The fact that there will be an in-person appearance today by Joe Biden, that he will campaign again in the real world after the things he's said leading up to this moment are utterly ridiculous. There's no other word for it. It's the best thing about President Trump, if you want to, try to give him credit for some of the successes he's had, which very few people seem to be capable of doing. And I understand that there's also some valid things you can say the opposite as far as President Trump and the way he handles himself. But the one thing I think all of us can agree on is he's usually fairly truthful in his own opinions. He's very honest about what he thinks and how he will respond to the things that he believes to be true. He doesn't pivot so much. There's not so many of these changes of heart for a President Trump because he says what he thinks, often at times in a way that maybe his campaign doesn't love or his administration doesn't love. He says that. He doesn't go out and say one thing because he thinks it'll benefit him the way that a Joe Biden does. And then once he realizes it's not working anymore, change to something completely different. That is not usually the move of one Donald Trump. That is just my opinion. I'm sure some may disagree, but it's one of the reasons I think that many of his supporters like him is you believe a little bit more in what he's saying being his actual opinion. There's so many times with so many politicians, and Biden is absolutely one of these examples. Kamala Harris is another one. I actually have a few different pieces to discuss as far as she's concerned. She and Joe Biden have now come out against the violence, the looting, the rioting as of, I think, just the other day in some strongly worded statements. This is very odd when you look at Kamala Harris, though, and the things she said about both protesting before, I think as far back as June, maybe we have some audio that we can play, and then the way in which she even raised funds to bail people out who were getting arrested at a time in which we were still confused as to what was going on in the streets. It seemed like there was a lot more violence than there should be at these peaceful protests. Kamala Harris was one of the people that tried to raise money and donate it to those defenses. That is not a great look for someone who now says that some of this needs to stop happening. I don't know why you would pay to get people out of jail if you now feel that some of that is inappropriate. That's just my question, though. And this is all stuff we can get to. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Thrilled to have you with me on a Monday.
I can't take it anymore!
Well, get over it. It's time to forge a new path with your very own political cartographer, Chad.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in, and guess what? You could be $5,000 richer in just a few days if you can come up with a sweet idea to a very challenging problem, actually. The city of Chicago is offering $5,000 to the person who figures out a way to feasibly eat outdoors in the winter in Chicago, Illinois. That is a challenge, I think. Restaurants do not want to have to close when we go back to indoor eating. The city of Chicago probably could just allow, I guess, people to eat inside. But no. The challenge is $5,000, and you come up with ideas. I think this is up until September 7th, so you've still got some time to get it in. My idea, just a pitch, would be to have a heated environment, maybe enclosed somehow, in which people could consume their food without sitting in the snow that is often very much around the streets of Chicago in the winter. I mean, come on. I don't know what other options you have here. If you've ever been to a cold weather city in the middle of the winter and maybe stand outside for public transportation of some kind, they have these little heat lamps above you or below you at some of the stops. And that's the best version of heating they can come up with so far outdoors. So I'm not excited for this to be all that great of a success. And I wonder how close you get to, still finding a way to eat inside, but technically be outside. Maybe you do this. Maybe have everybody have their own personal bubble, and then all of their air is somehow filtered through some kind of contraption to the outdoors, but they're sitting inside. So one at a time, you climb into your own bubble, and then all of your breaths, all of your air is being filtered out in its own unique spot so that you're not sharing it with anyone else. That's the best I can do, Chicago, and I don't think you're giving me $5,000 for that because it's probably too costly to put into place. I think it would work, by the way, or just maybe eat inside. That's up to you. Coors Light is also doing something kind of cool. I thought these were fun, different stories to talk about because the regular news often depresses myself and probably a lot of people. Coors Light is going to send 5 people to their Zoom background location. Obviously, as we worked from home for a long time, one of the sillier things that I guess went viral on social media was all the different backgrounds we use during those chats to make us feel like we went. There's actually a great commercial right now. I forget what the company is. I think it's like hotels.com or something about how we all have to remember that places exist other than your house. It's very funny. And this, I guess, is case in point there. When we were doing the Zoom background, we hoped that we would eventually be at the places behind us. Well, Coors Light is going to make that happen because beer brands are getting in on this action very, very intentionally and very smartly. To enter, all you have to do is go to CoorsLight.com/outside, because that is a place that exists for people who forgot it does. And you use a screenshot that you upload of yourself during an actual video chat. You have to have had this conversation for real. They will then announce the winners and give away 500,000 cans of beer as well, but send 5 very lucky people to their locations of choice. This is the kind of thing that you fake, right? I mean, if you haven't been doing this, but you hear that it's real, you now go nuts. You now do the most things you can. I mean, we just sent people to space. The guy who had the background that was the moon isn't entirely unlikely to get his dream fulfilled. You know, we're getting closer every day to having a private version of that. Maybe Coors can send you there. I would just do as many as I can as well. I would enter this multiple times. I'm not seeing anything in the rules saying you can't. So that's great. One last thing, and I just thought it was fun to share because, you know, sometimes you feel like there's so much stress in the world that maybe anything that used to be stressful just isn't anymore. There are some guidelines on how to prevent a polar bear attack that I saw out there. And my favorite is number 3, the things you have to do, maybe defend yourself with certain things. But number 3 is to just get naked. That is a real piece of advice, a real tip. And this all came from, I think, Copenhagen. They said that these are the top reasons top ways in which you can prevent a polar bear if it attacks your campsite. And I just love it. Like, that feels like a 2020 solution if I've ever heard one. You know, if nothing else is working, if you have a bear attacking your campsite, you might as well just tell everybody to get naked and hope it scares the bear away. That is actual advice from a tourism destination manager out there in the world. Her name is Sarah Woodall. I'd like to meet Sarah, probably interview her at some time, because these are the kind of solutions that I can certainly try more to understand. And maybe it's better for like all of 2020. Hey, if something's going wrong, get naked. See what happens then. All right. Craig Collins filling in. I'll see if I'm back after this.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for the day. Chad will be back on Monday. Thrilled to be here with you. Democratic presidential hopeful nominee Joe Biden is going to be continuing his in-person campaigning. He will be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania this evening. He's going to talk, according to his campaign, about how voters may or may not feel safe voting, I guess, 1, and 2, maybe the civil unrest that exists and the amount of violence that's been happening on the streets, along with any kind of peaceful protesting. That will all come up during today's address. It'll be interesting to see exactly how that's handled, as I've said, because, well, Joe Biden and a lot of people on the left have been totally okay with a lot of things happening, or just maybe not mentioning them. If you go back to the Democratic National Convention, the approach was to not mention looting, rioting, anything that existed that was negative in that world, and only praise those who choose to peacefully protest what is a valid thing to be discussing at a greater level. And I want to say that, too, because I've noticed anytime you have a conversation with anyone that disagrees with you, but they're actually willing to talk to you, which, by the way, is rare in this world, they immediately assume that by saying one thing, you mean 65 things. One sentence to us now actually means 35 different things. So when I say something like rooting, wow, I can't believe I keep doing it, looting and rioting are bad, some people hear me say that getting civil rights is also something I disagree with, and that's not at all the case. Getting more fair treatment by the police or whoever are all valuable conversations to be had. I don't think we need to be shooting each other to get those things addressed, though, like what tragically happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin last week. And then over the weekend, again, tragically happened in Portland. A person that is a supporter of the president was killed on Saturday, and obviously a person who I think supports the president and was a person that very much disagreed with the protesting going on, killed people in Kenosha. These are not valuable solutions to a problem at all. These are horrendous, horrible things happening, and they need to be condemned entirely. You need to just come out and say that. And while saying that, we need to beg everyone to understand that that's the entirety of the statement, and there's no additional pieces being added, like the protesting itself is wrong, because it's not. Peaceful protesting is good and what should be happening whenever something needs to be changed in our society. I just want to make sure I make that point clear. But anyway, these will all be things that come up in the former Vice President Joe Biden's speech. He's a presidential nominee that he'll be giving in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania this evening. It'll be very interesting to also hear how the campaign tries to address the fact that up until, I think, a week ago, Joe Biden had been saying that he was intent on not doing any sort of in-person appearances because the science just dictated that he couldn't. Well, now apparently the science is fine with the fact that he's going to go out and be in the world. And I think what it more is right now is a reflection of the way in which the Republican National Convention may have actually hit voters in a place that they care about. And that would be to condemn violence, to condemn the things that are happening that are bad in our society, and to push for solutions to that. It is strange to see places like Portland resist a lot of the help that is being offered to them by the president, or even, honestly, this is just as surreal to me. The mayor of the mayor of Portland is pushing back on any need to want federal aid of any kind, federal law enforcement officials there in the community. That would be Ted Wheeler. And then a lot of the politicians out of Wisconsin are saying they don't even want the president to visit the area, to visit Kenosha, which to me is surreal because he happens to be the president of the United States, one, and he would like to come be a part of that community, I think, to actually hear the voices of those concerned. There is a desire to connect with these issues as they're happening and give them a platform, in a sense, by the president going to an area. This is every president who's ever done this, by the way, visiting an area where something has happened that is of national interest. It gives that platform to that area. It adds significance to the things that occurred there because the president feels it's important to go. And for politicians to tell him, no, we don't want help, or we don't want you in the area at all, to actually insinuate that he himself appearing there would be in some way stoking and inciting more violence is tremendously unique as far as our country is concerned. Here is one of those politicians out of Wisconsin, the lieutenant governor, speaking a little bit about that today, over the weekend, and how he just feels that it's inappropriate for the president to even visit the area.
Showed up in Kenosha, marched peacefully through the streets. Well, there are stages in protest and there are stages in organizing. I think that we need to come to some sort of resolve, and Joe Biden needs to clearly outline his plan, which he's been doing. He's been talking about the need for us to have our racial reckoning and talk about the issues that are important and address them as well, especially the more deep systemic ones. You know, we talk about police violence a lot, but there are so many other issues that are.
That is actually him discussing how Joe Biden should visit the area, which to me is an interesting transition. But here is the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin talking about how President Trump should not visit.
You look at the incendiary remarks that the president has made. They centered an entire convention around creating more animosity and creating more division around what's going on in Kenosha. So I don't know how, given any of the previous statements that the president made, that he intends to come here to be helpful. And we absolutely don't need that right now. We had a beautiful celebration yesterday. People from all walks of life showed up in Kenosha, marched peacefully through the streets.
I just don't understand. I don't think I can ever understand how you can say something is beautiful and peaceful when just recently, and obviously very tragically, it wasn't. And that's the kind of thing that's going to continue to occur, at least has been repeating itself in all kinds of ways, not just in one protester or a counter-protester doing harm or taking the life of someone on the opposite side, which has now happened multiple times. But there is, as you see in a lot of different communities, just an amount of violence and damage that is caused to those areas, oftentimes to communities that people are actually marching to support. Those are the ones that they happen to be damaging when they're rioting and looting. It just makes no sense to not want a platform like the president of the United States, no matter who it is, to visit the area. Don't you assume that those who support the president would care more about an issue because the president went there and spoke about it in that place? Doesn't that add more concern, more credibility, more value to the conversation being had, the positive one, the beautiful one being had in a community, and also condemning the actions that are negative, that are bad. And he wants, the President of the United States would like to speak to the family of the victim of the shooting in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the victims of the shootings in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He'd like to speak to a lot of individuals involved in some of these things. So it makes tremendous sense to me. President Trump also would like to meet Jacob Blake's family, that this would add value to the conversation that so many want to be had in an area like that, or in general in the country, for the president to go. To say that he can't because it just incites violence for him to go, it's shockingly inconsistent with me, with what we've done for so long in our country by giving any level of respect to the person within that office. Any level of value provided by that office is just completely disregarded by so many people right now. You know what? All right, let's transition again to some other things in the world, because I can't handle this all the time. There is a video game coming out. It's being highly touted, and I usually don't cover many video games on shows like this. But the reason why this video game is created is because it believes that people might miss traveling. You might miss things like getting on a plane, flying to a destination, and enjoying life in places that maybe a lot of us aren't going right now. What I thought was interesting about Airplane Mode, the video game that's coming out of AMC Gaming, is that it's billed as the only flight simulator that'll let you experience the intense excitement of traveling economy class from one location to another. And these are long-haul flights. They said, yeah, there's a video game in 2020 being made that doesn't even put you in a first-class experience. I don't know how you better understand the world in which we live than people being excited about the potential for a game to get out there that maybe makes you, I don't know, like Section 4 as far as the boarding goes, your boarding party 3, and then you get to go in an economy class part of the plane and have an experience that you're not even having right now. And that's a video game. It makes no sense to me. Why wouldn't you go as far as you can and maybe spend most of the time playing a virtual game on, like, say, the island you're trying to travel to? Players will be treated, this is part of the explanation of this game, to an in-flight meal, to some turbulence, and to Wi-Fi outages as they play. There also maybe some babies that cry. This is guaranteed on the flights, part of the description of the game. I don't know if this is just intent to be mean. Like, maybe the whole plan here is just to demonstrate to us that we're not missing out on what we think we're missing out on. I'm not sure, but it's a real thing. There is a video game coming to the world, and I can't wait for people to play it on ESPN, where you just take a boring flight in a negative situation and you don't get to splurge on anything. I wonder if they even tell you they're out of things if you try to order something. That would be the excitement that we can expect. Also, there is going to be a way in which you can do a real-life experience of traveling to Mars. There's a brand new space camp that's opening up, and this excited me because maybe some people feel like they want to go to another planet right now. This is being shared right now on Instagram. There's the red planet is 34 million miles away, of course, but you can get the brilliant experience by just traveling to Jordan, and you'll get to go to their luxury camp, which is orange-hued in nature. It's out in the desert, and then you get a lot of things that they believe to be the life we'd all experience on Mars. That makes total sense. If you want to have fun this year, why don't you play a video game that simulates going economy class to a destination, and then go to a camp that has almost nothing there and the colors of a certain planet, because, well, Mars would still be fairly lonely if you were a human being that got to go there. So that is the camp that is being touted right now on social media as well, and getting a lot of likes on the Instagram. That is the world in which we live, and it is tremendously entertaining to me. All right, I got to take another break. This is the Chad Benson Show. I am Craig Collins filling in.
No need to fear. We promise we won't give you a noogie and make you cry Russia, Russia, Russia.
Who is the fearless leader?
Fui.
Fui, fui, and double fui.
What is your language? This is a family show, remember?
Fui to families too.
Nostrovia. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Have you wanted to visit a scenic island in Brazil? But you've been sad you can't because, so many things are going on in the world from a health standpoint that make it probably not the greatest to go traveling right now. Well, don't worry. They've reopened the islands to travelers from all across the world. There's just one condition for anyone that wants to go to these volcanic islands, I guess 21 of them that exist in Brazil. You have to prove that you already had COVID-19. That's real. You have to prove that you're no longer capable, I guess, according to them, of getting this, that you have antibodies in your blood that show that you've already beaten the virus. That's the only way you go. You can't prove that you're currently not sick. That isn't valuable to a group of scientists that exist here in Brazil that want you to get to their tourist destination that has obviously been impacted heavily by the fact that people aren't going there. There is no evidence that exists that people who already had COVID-19 are completely immune right now. That's something the World Health Organization has recently let out into the world. But Brazil is like, hey, this makes sense to us. Maybe we make a reality TV show out of this. These are all the people who've beaten the virus. They can hang out on the 21 volcanic islands and have a really great time. That's hilarious to me that that's the kind of requirement that maybe more places will wind up putting in place, is that, in order to come visit our scenic and our beautiful destination, you got to prove to us that you already got through this horrible thing that is COVID-19, horrible depending on your, I guess, position on that. And now, you can party in an island, which maybe the trip should be free. I assume that should be a part of it, is that if you fought something and beaten it, even if you had no symptoms, you then get a free trip to a volcanic island in Brazil. It's just me. I also saw a lot of debate as far as the return of college students in a lot of areas. There's been a lot of different reporting on the amount of infections that colleges are seeing in their student base as they return to campuses throughout the country. Obviously, part of the problem being that in a lot of these areas, maybe not the big cities where there's so much going on already, but in these smaller communities that happen to have big universities in them, say South Bend, Indiana, for one, and Notre Dame, you're seeing a lot of the community be fairly upset that kids are returning to these areas and bringing into communities things that might not have been there in as great a degree. This is a very valuable conversation, I think, to be having, because I don't know the right response here completely, but I do know that if the universities felt it was going to be financially difficult for them to make it through a semester with kids studying remotely, and that's the big reason to bring kids on campus and thus bring some positive cases of COVID-19 into areas that don't want to see these positive cases, that maybe the right argument now would be to continue to not have this happen. The University of Alabama, which had planned for face-to-face instruction in 80% of the classes and was allowing indoor gatherings of up to 50 people, had the worst volume outbreak of COVID-19 cases. They approached 600 in just a week of positive tests from students. UNC Chapel Hill sent students home after discovering outbreaks linked to parties at dorms and frats. Yes, a part of the problem is that you're bringing college kids back into the community, and they are getting together to party, and then those parties may potentially be spreading the COVID-19 positive tests. Northeastern sent warnings to 115 freshmen who had a party that they talked about on social media. Purdue and Syracuse University both suspended students who had been caught partying, and UConn has even evicted some from its areas. Notre Dame also moved students to remote learning after having multiple outbreaks, as I mentioned a second ago. And this is just some of the many, many stories you're seeing in all different communities throughout our country. I don't know. I think that it's important to get education in person for elementary school kids, for children. They need a place to learn. They need to interact with a teacher as safely as they possibly can. But a college kid, I think a college kid might be capable of learning online, and maybe it's not as valuable to bring them into a community that had seen, say, a small amount of cases until college returned and all the partying started to happen again. And I know that there's a lot of debate as to a lot of what's going on here, and a lot of young people are getting COVID-19 now, and many of them seem to be handling it well, having very mild symptoms, as all the science said they would. And yet, I get it. If you're in a community like South Bend and you saw a huge jump in the amount of cases you had there, I imagine you're not so psyched to have all the students back, even if it means having Notre Dame football back, which I personally am very excited about. There's a lot going on in the world, though, and I think just one less valuable thing to be adding to the conversation is spikes in cases in a bunch of different communities that happen to be college towns. That might also be skewing a lot of these results that are happening in some areas and maybe pushing some politicians to do things like potentially reclose areas. I know in Illinois, that's something that's happening in a lot of places, a lot of their downstate portions of that state, because of the amount of cases that are being brought in by college students and not the ones that exist within a community. And this is one of the many ways, I think, in which you can really hamper economies by closing things down, because college kids create a spike that would be enough for some to then validate things like closing certain areas. And I think to a certain extent, it's what our Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden is talking about a lot when he starts to insinuate closing things back down, that there's so many outbreaks going on throughout all of the country right now and they're not slowing. Well, a big reason for that might actually be the returning of college-age students to a lot of these communities, and not because the communities themselves are all of a sudden having huge outbreaks. So I think that conversation hopefully continues as the universities continue to address these issues and maybe continue to inform the public of just how many students in certain areas are getting these kinds of illnesses. That would be tremendously valuable information as we go here. We'll see what Biden talks about tonight, though, I guess. All right. This is the Chad Benson Show. I'm Craig Collins filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for the day. Thrilled to be here with you. I want to start off by one of the biggest conversations happening. The conversation is all about violence erupting in all different communities. There's also, I guess, some forms of peaceful protesting. There's rioting, there's looting, there's all kinds of things going on. And now at least twice we have seen deadly force happening in between protesters and counter-protesters. The first time it happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, when a member of one side of the political aisle, not an actual politician, this is just a supporter of things, took a gun to a rally and then tragically shot and killed two people and injured a third. Now we have another story over the weekend. This is out of Portland, where one person who is from the counter-protesting side of things was shot and killed. So this can't possibly be something that anyone would struggle to condemn, right? This is the kind of thing that every single person out there, every single person in power would tell us cannot happen anymore and needs to stop happening. And yet, for some reason, it appeared as easily as just a week ago and 2 weeks ago when you watched the conventions that only one side of the political aisle was willing to discuss this in depth, and only one candidate for president, the current president of the United States, and his administration, his team, are willing to discuss this. Here is Lara Trump discussing the violence in streets and her reaction, her feelings as far as what will be done if President Trump is reelected.
Well, that is never something that any of us would want to see happen. Absolutely not. I think, unfortunately, it looks really bad, specifically for Joe Biden and the Biden campaign, because, Chris, you might remember that it took him about 3 months to finally come out and condemn this violence and say that people should stop doing it. The president from day one has been saying this, and I'll reiterate what I just said in my last answer to you, which is that the president has said, I have federal resources available to every mayor in every city across this country. We don't want violence in our streets. We want to keep people safe. If you don't have safety in your communities, what do you have? Nothing else matters.
Look, there's a lot of really great points made there, the best of which is probably the fact that federal resources have been made available, have been offered to areas, and at times have even been kind of pushed on certain areas, and they are getting resisted. We have violence, we have shootings happening, and yet a lot of areas are saying that it would be bad to allow federal officers to come into those areas to help contain the violence. This makes no sense to a lot of Americans, as is shown in recent polling, recent conversations about this, and even the betting line as to who will win the presidential election now. President Trump closing the gap substantially in the last few months in Vegas compared to presidential candidate and former VP Joe Biden. It's tremendously interesting to see the way in which this story continues to develop and continues to be talked about, because for so long, so much of the media and certainly people in the Democratic Party had just been ignoring the things that were going on, and even Kamala Harris supporting certain funds that would help bail people out of jail who are getting arrested for these kind of things, and stand on some sort of platform that it was wrong for them to be arrested in the first place and they needed to be protected and bailed out, when in all honesty, that was just the tip of the iceberg as far as the amount of violence that would take place in communities, and just, I guess, at certain points be ignored by a large amount of the media. It is surreal to think that this will become one of the reasons in which, and actually a lot of questions are being asked to people on the Trump campaign as to whether or not President Trump wants violence because it helps him win the election. And that is ridiculous as far as a statement goes. You don't make federal resources available to prevent violence if what you want is violence, if what you want is tragedy after tragedy. That makes no sense. But this has been an easy win for people on the Republican side of the conversation and for the president, because it's just surreal that we're in a world in which people would actually try to take an opposite position. And then actually, you know what, just to point out another big confusion for me as far as the president makes a decision, takes an action, and it's not celebrated at all. It's not even treated valuably by a lot of places. The amount of unemployment payments that he made available through executive order, that $300 to $400 extra dollars is going to start getting paid out in certain states. Those states are Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, and Louisiana as early as this week. A lot of other states now trying to apply and get funding, but some, just a few, still haven't even applied. Illinois, one of the states that has now applied after their politicians said many a negative thing about the president. Even Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, saying things about how the president can't possibly help with federal aid and other things there, and agents there, and then eventually accepted them when violence and things got out of hand. So this is another really great example of a way in which, look, a guy that I know that people have all different kinds of opinions about can do a positive thing and just be ignored for it. He can do something valuable like add payments to those that are unemployed right now at a historic time of unemployment. And mostly this can be a nothing burger conversation. The biggest takes I saw for it after it happened are how it was a terrible decision. And yet now, with other politicians incapable of coming to any kind of agreement on an unemployment payment, on a stimulus package that includes that, we now have a world in which the presidential actions are the ones that are being utilized by many states to help prop up those who need financial assistance. And that's not a story anywhere. But I guess maybe right here, I'm thrilled with that. All right, let me shift to something that I found tremendously interesting because, well, I'm a supporter of a Croc, of a shoe that many people do not like. I think that they're comfortable. I think they're valuable. A 50-year-old man was wearing a pair of camouflage Crocs. I'm not sure why we had to add the design, but it's there. And his pajamas when he went out and apparently got struck by lightning. He has been covered in the Sacramento News for this happening to him. He said that it really hurts as far as the lightning strike. It blew his Crocs off his feet, and yet he sort of credits his attire he was wearing for potentially saving his life. He just said that it was a unique and horrible experience in a lot of ways, and yet he is valuing and highlighting the benefit of a Croc because the rubber, it might have absorbed some of the lightning, I guess, according to him, or it might have even prevented him from having a stroke, according to some meteorologists and some medical professionals. So this is the statement of the day, and it is one that absolutely is true. Crocs saved a man's life. The next time that you belittle a shoe product like that, and you maybe make fun of a friend who decided to rock a Croc, just realize right now that they are a life-saving device in some scenarios. I mean, I guess rare scenarios, but still, they save lives. I would like to see that on the next commercial for the Croc product that I don't think I've ever seen. And finally, one last thing in sillier news of the day. Social media has been going wild recently for people that are telling the world what their preferred gas station snack is. That's right. This has gone viral in 2020. What is the preferred purchase when you stop off at a gas station? Some not surprising answers are coming to the top of this heap here. One of the most popular things to buy is a flaming hot Cheeto, which doesn't exactly surprise me. Also, any kind of cured meats. Those are things that are very popular. Energy drinks, candy, Arizona iced teas are routinely purchased by many a millennial at a gas station. These are the ones talking about this, and actually the social media platform TikTok which we still don't know how much of that is dangerous to be on, but it's absolutely all junk food. Those are the things that you buy when you go into a gas station, because anyone ever in the history of gas station food who's purchased, say, the sushi there, knows exactly why you regret something like that, knows why it's a much better decision to get the old potato chips and not go for the fancy product that you have no idea how long it's been at a gas station, my friends. But do me a favor, because I love to put things on the social media pages for Chad Benson that he does not understand at all. Tell me your favorite, your preferred gas station snack. Go to our social media pages and let us know what you purchase when you drop off there, because everybody does. I mean, come on, it's very tempting to go in and grab something. And I guess the apples and the bananas, the fruit items, did make the bottom end of this list of most popular purchases. But they pale in comparison to the amount of people who hit up a Flamin' Hot Cheeto when they walk into the gas station. Let us know. And then when Chad comes back on Monday, he'll be like, what was happening on our social media pages? It was Craig Collins' fault. Or you can go to the Craig Collins Show on Facebook if you want to tell me directly. But what's your favorite snack to get when you hit the gas station? And honestly, if anybody out there says something fancy, you know you got sick from it at least once. We both know it. And just one more time, last thing, and then I got to take a break. Crocs save lives. True statement today on the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in. More after this.
I'm so tired. I'm exhausted.
If you're part of the politically exhausted majority, don't fear. Your time to be validated and rejuvenated is here. Wake up. It's the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in and thrilled to be here. A university dove into different statements that are made at political speeches since 1873. The Kansas State University political science team dove into all the different ways in which I guess some speeches were thought to be effective and some were thought to be very far from effective. And they came up with some modern tips for those who give political speeches in 2020. And I am just going to give you some of those tips and ask you who you think best embodies each and every one of these things. The first one is to use smaller vocabulary and simpler language. This is something that benefits any candidate running for a political office. The more complicated you are in your statements, maybe even the more eloquent you are not always the more valuable to those who are hearing it, because they need to fully understand what you're saying. Second would be to express more positivity overall, quote, because everything should be great. Well, that's interesting. I can't think of what candidate does a really good job of expressing positivity on a very consistent basis. And even the convention that focused more on maybe positivity than negativity. Do not be neutral is the third tip from the Kansas State University investigation into all the different political conversations that have happened over the last 138 years. Express negative opinions about the opposing side, or maybe even positive sentiments about your own side, but do not be neutral. That's interesting advice. Include wider chasms between the Democrats and the Republicans whenever possible. Do not stick to, and I know a lot of people are saying that this is bad, that we've become so politically divided and maybe the conversations are so politically slanted that people are only encouraged to disagree more with those on the opposite side. And yet, apparently, according to political scientists, according to data scientists, it's tremendously valuable to getting your point across to demonstrate the ways in which you utterly disagree with the opposing side. And finally, be short. Don't have super long speeches on a consistent basis. Do your best at brevity whenever you can. This is because the Democrats specifically went through a period of time, I guess in the early 1900s, where they had very long speeches, and it very much harmed them, according to our data scientists. This was really interesting information for me. They also found that female voters, women voters, were not necessarily a priority until as late as the 1980s. There was a long period of time where that was not a focus of conversation, and yet since the 1980s has been a very large focus of conversation. And one thing that you hear a lot about President Trump right now is that one of the groups of voters he might still be struggling with are those in the suburban environment, and certainly the female voter in that environment. So that is a conversation you hear a lot now. Apparently, this has not been a focus at all until the 1980s. And just finally, one other thing, most voters have about an 8th to 9th grade reading level. So this is why there's so much encouragement. I guess we were on an upswing for a long time in the country. And then in about the late 70s, we started to go back downward. So that reading level right now is akin to someone who maybe just got into high school. With all your speeches, don't use anything more complicated than that. I found that tremendously interesting as far as information goes. I also saw this, and I know that we used to have conversations about this differently before the health crisis that is this past year. But people always kind of warned that the mass use of a whole lot of a hand sanitizer might eventually create a, quote, unstoppable superbug. Well, another expert has weighed in on this idea, saying that this year we might have really gone the other way as far as the amount of hand sanitizer we're all using, and that if this continues, we are definitely going to create a superbug. And he even called it, this is Dr. Andrew Kemp. He is a head scientific researcher of the British Institute of Cleaning Science. I don't even know that that's a school. That's very confusing to me. They're just a cleaning sciences educational place. They say that it's an Armageddon situation, that an antibody resistant superbug will easily adapt and survive because of the amount of times that we're using the 99.9% alcohol to clean our hands. So that, I guess I just wanted to share that to let us all know that there's no way to win here. There's no good outcome in all this, I guess, because some guy somewhere, some medical professional, some educational human is going to tell us that, well, the solution to cleaning up your hands is actually going to cause a horrible problem. So it's just a world that we need to continue to find the best way we can to live in and accept, because, there's no solution. Everything's terrible. That's not true. I am supposed to be more positive. That's what I just learned earlier on in this segment. So we're doing great. Australia is actually offering to let people get a paid position to move and live in paradise on one of their tropical islands. This comes from the conservational officials in Australia who have announced they are seeking someone to take a full-time job surrounded by the Great Barrier Reef. The caretakers live in paradise on a tropical island surrounded by the Great Barrier Reef, but maintain an island. It is hard work. This is the authorities' assistant there, Mark Reed, said the position requires the winning candidate to live full-time and complete specific duties, including maintaining buildings and infrastructure, including the solar power system and sewage treatment systems, liaise with tourist operations, clean toilets, manage weeds, groundwork as necessary, and continue supporting the bird population that exists in the area. I can do all this. I think I can do all this because you get to live on a beautiful island, and I wonder if a lot of people can do this. They are currently accepting applications through the end of September for anyone that wants to try to go have a job in which the only thing you do is wake up every day and try to survive and support an island, although that does include getting solar power systems working. I have no ability to do that. And even cleaning some toilets, which doesn't sound like a lot of fun at all. But hey, I mean, the upside, you're living on an island. I don't think that Australia, though, is probably too willing to accept people from the United States right now. So I'm probably screwed as far as this goes. But I'm just putting it out there. It's an option in the year in which we're living. If you want to try to do something else with your life, that is out there and it's available. It is 9 miles off the coast. So it's a very beautiful area, according to them. And, no mention of the pay, by the way. I didn't see any mention of exactly how much that actually pays you, but I guess you live for free, so maybe it's not going to be the best. All right, one other quick story, one other odd news story that I found fascinating. A sheep sold for a record amount of money. Yes, a sheep, an obscene amount of money, according to people. How much was it? It was actually about $500,000, $490,000. People there said that this was obscene, and it shouldn't be the cost of buying things like this for the farming community. Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Why so much money?
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. The topic of the day, at least for me and maybe a lot of other people, is the amount of violence that's taken place in so many parts of our country. President Trump tweeting all this morning about Portland specifically. He also did touch on Kenosha, Wisconsin, saying that this is the president tweeting on social media, Portland is a mess and it has been for many years. If this joke of a mayor doesn't clean it up, we will go in and do it for them. He then mentions that if I didn't insist on having a National Guard active to go into Kenosha, Wisconsin, there would be no Kenosha right now. Also, there would have been great death and injury. I want to thank law enforcement and the National Guard. I will see you on Tuesday. He does intend to travel to Kenosha, Wisconsin on Tuesday. He wants to meet with victims' families. He wants to meet with a lot of individuals there, and he wants to speak to the country as a whole. That's something the president is uniquely capable of doing. Any president, not just the current one, and going into areas in which we've seen relevant and national interest stories like this take place. It's very common. However, the politicians that exist there have no interest in having the president visit the area, which is still going to be very confusing to a lot of people, myself included, because they feel as though he will incite violence simply by being there and trying to do things like talk to those who have been impacted by the civil unrest and the conversations about civil unrest and why maybe there needs to be a change in the way in which some of our law enforcement work with certain communities, with the African-American community and with black men. That is all relevant and valuable conversations, ones in which the president wants to address and be a part of and find solutions for by going and visiting the area and talking to people like Jacob Blake's family. These are things that matter a lot, and yet they're being so utterly resisted for reasons that don't make sense to me on the political sides of the aisle that are not it has to be a political statement. But here is Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes talking about exactly that he has no interest in having President Trump visit the area anytime soon.
You look at the incendiary remarks that the president has made. They centered an entire convention around creating more animosity and creating more division around what's going on in Kenosha. So I don't know how, given any of the previous statements that the president made, that he intends to come here to be helpful.
I just don't understand this. And yet the same question is then asked about presidential candidate and former Vice President Joe Biden, and the response is utterly different about what Biden can do to come to the community. He can unite, he can bring people together, and apparently the president visiting does not do that. Here's a little bit of what he said, the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, about Joe Biden visiting the area, which is also an intention he's made well known.
Well, there are stages in protest and there are stages in organizing. I think that we need to come to some sort of resolve, and Joe Biden needs to clearly outline his plan, which he's been doing. He's been talking about the need for us to have our racial reckoning and talk about the issues that are important and address them as well, especially the more deep systemic ones. You know, we talk about police violence a lot, but there are so many other issues that are systemic violence, like lack of access to health care, education issues, environmental issues. We have so much work to do, and I hope that when Joe Biden does visit, that he lays out clearly and very plainly, as he does speak very clearly and plainly about these things. And
okay, look, right there I can stop this because I know that all of that was a political statement and not at all necessarily a truthful statement because of one thing that was said, and it was just said a second ago, talking about how Joe Biden speaks.
That he lays out clearly and very plainly, as he does speak very clearly and plainly.
No, I don't think that's accurate. I think there's a lot of times where Joe Biden does not speak very plainly and accurately and clearly because, well, that is one of the things he's most known to struggle with outside of when he has a very rehearsed speech at a national convention. I don't think that he's going to do a great job. I mean, there's viral video of Robin Williams, the late great Robin Williams, making fun of Joe Biden years ago for not being able to speak in public settings just because he gets a little lost in his words. So right there, I then know I can check out of every part of that conversation because it's 100% political. And it just makes no sense to me. And I know that people like and dislike the current president a lot. Your take is strong on this person, but he is the current president of the United States, and he has interest in traveling to an area and addressing an issue by being there and talking to those involved. And the interest in that happening is zero for the politicians in the area because this is a political hit job. That's all that it is. I don't think that's even a hot take at this point, but I might be wrong in saying that. All right, let's move on to other things. Some sad news, actually. Legendary Georgetown basketball coach John Thompson passed away at the age of 78 today. Also over the weekend, shocking news, actor Chadwick Boseman passed away. He is best known for the Black Panther role that he played in the Marvel movies. He was a superhero in those. He also played a lot of actual characters that existed in real life that he was very well regarded in those portrayals. People like Jackie Robinson. Both of these are tremendously valuable individuals to our community and have both been lost to us. So it's very sad news on both fronts to see that John Thompson has passed away, and to, again, be shocked at the news that Chadwick Boseman passed away because he was fighting cancer for 4 years, Chadwick, and didn't tell anybody. He kept it a secret to a degree that I didn't think was even possible in the current world in which we live, and him and his family did. And it only became public now because, sadly, he lost his battle with colon cancer. Actually, there was a lot of really great tributes on social media and even on television last night to Chadwick and his lost potential, because at 43, you had a lot of career left in front of you. Very sad that happened. So I just want to highlight that I'm a huge Marvel nerd, a huge fan of comic books, which I don't think I talk about often on the radio. So I was stunned and very sad to hear about that. And then also a huge fan of college basketball. So disappointed as well. All right, let's bring the mood back up a little bit. Let's talk about something else. There is a real estate listing that has gone viral on social media because of one unique decision in this real estate listing. Thousands of people are liking and hundreds are commenting on. I don't know. Look, the place is listed for $166,000. It's a relatively small condo, and one of the unique problems was, where did you find an area to put a bed in this condo? Because, well, it's essentially a studio apartment. So they put a stepladder up over the actual entrance thing, the entrance a staircase, because it's a second floor unit. And essentially you sleep in a bed that is over the stairs. This makes no sense. You've got to look this up. Maybe we'll share it on our social media pages. But this is the thing that made people laugh quite a bit about the decision-making of the previous owner. It's just sitting there. It's just in the middle of the staircase that you'd walk up and down every day to enter your studio apartment or your studio condo. And there you go. You fold out the bed and you have a sleeping over stairs situation taking place. One user on social media commenting that, all right, you roll off the bed and you're not going to be with us anymore. That would be a very bad decision for a lot of people to buy. I just don't get it. It's making a lot of people tremendously happy on social media, though, because, it's the kind of thing that you probably have removed before you sell a place. If that's something you want in your living situation, and then you maybe want to flip it for cash at some point, you probably want to make sure to change the bed so it's not over a flight of stairs. All right, that's just me. I had to rant a bit. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. We have a lot to get to today, some serious, some not so serious, as you can tell. I do want to talk about a guy that's offering to rent out his parenting services to any deadbeat parents out there, anyone that's not living up to the expectations you should be. It's a very affordable cost, and he's willing to take the kids home if that's what you need. I thought it was a fairly funny post, so I'll read that. I'll get to a lot of other things. As I said, Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show.
Don't let the Washington Beltway strangle you. This is where the exhausted majority comes to refuel, realign, and reevaluate. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, and just for a minute, I want to talk about the MTV VMAs, the Video Music Awards. One, my producer points out very aptly that the MTV channel does not really show a lot of videos anymore, so it is weird that the top prize and even the contest itself is named after video music, because that's not really a thing that MTV, the music television station, plays all that many of anymore. Lady Gaga, though, was a story of the evening. She won several an award, including a Tricon Award, which I'm still kind of confused as to what that is. I think she won because she's an actress, she's a singer, and she also is a fashion icon. And yet her fashion icon status may be called a tad into question after the things she wore. You got to Google it. If you didn't watch, and I assume a lot of people didn't watch the MTV Music Awards, you just got to look at the things she wore while accepting certain awards or just performing in general. Because at one point she had a regular human dress on and then a mask with horns attached to it. It looked intense. That was one of the looks. There was another one that was, I don't know, a giant blanket, I assume, or she was trying to look sort of like a panda. And then she had a silver, very sparkly mask on. She rocked masks throughout the evening, of course. There was another electronic-looking mask she actually performed in. And then my favorite of the evening, she looked very much like some sort of fairy tale villain or version of maybe a character you'd see in an upcoming Guillermo del Toro movie. But essentially, she wore a silver ridiculous suit and then a giant silver mask and what I think is like a baby mobile on the top of her head. It makes no sense to me, the things that were worn throughout the evening, but she certainly takes the cake. And you just got to Google it because honestly, like there's got to be someone that's a part of her team that looks at the wardrobe choices she makes while winning an award for her wardrobe choices. Is like, I don't know, man, that might not make a mistake. That might be a mistake. Although she did one time wear a dress entirely made out of meat. So you never really know as far as Lady Gaga is concerned. But these looks were, I don't know. I watched some of the awards last night because they were on and I couldn't help myself. And then I just kept turning up the volume every time Lady Gaga took the stage because she looked ridiculous. This is not, I don't get it. And she continued to say, wear a mask at the end of her speeches, which is fine. But certainly I don't think you would want to borrow the ones that she had on that evening. Maybe wear something a little more understated. The Weeknd also won a couple awards and in both said that it was hard for him to celebrate. So he simply thanked people and walked off the stage. Similar to the way that the sports world handled a lot of protesting over the last couple weeks. I thought it was interesting. And I know there's a lot of hot takes if I accidentally stumble into talking about sports for a second with the NBA doing a lot of the political things they were already doing, a lot of the messaging they already were putting out into the world while playing games and then choosing not to play for a little while. And I'm going to go contrarian on this one thing. Not that I want to see MLB, NBA, or any other league just not play their sport for multiple days at a time. That is obviously going to be something that's detrimental to those sports themselves. I think that you are going to hurt the amount of fans that watch your respective sport if you just decide every so often to not play. But that, to me, is a much better use of the platform they are given than kneeling during the national anthem. If they choose to just not play, if they choose to truly protest whatever's going on in the world by not being willing to suit up and perform whatever sport it is that they're professionally paid to perform, that, to me, is, I guess, activism the way it should be utilized. I don't think that I agree with it, per se, like I said, because I would like to see sports happen. And I personally like the distraction that sports provide to me. It's one of the reasons I turn to it. It's one of the reasons that I think a lot of fans turn to it. And it is such a valuable product is because it's an escape from a lot of things that are the real world in ways. I mean, you've never heard someone, truly defend their love of a sports team by saying that they think it's as important as other actually important things in the world. It's just because it's so lovely to have that distraction. I'm a huge Yankee fan. I follow the Yankees to a degree that is inappropriate, according to my wife, a lot of times. And the reason I do it is because of how great of a distraction it is from any stress in my own personal life or anything going on in the world. But if a league wants to put in jeopardy, and this is the way I will say it, the value of their product by standing for issues that they believe are important enough to stand for, or players believe they are important enough to stand for, I'm supportive of you making that decision. This is not in any way impacting what I feel is an important reflection, an important way to value things like our flag and our national anthem. This is you choosing to give up, at least for a few days, your status as a athlete and be something else, and then hope that the world that consumes your product doesn't mind what you're doing. And obviously, these protesting happen in a lot of places. This, to me, isn't something we should be mad about in the fact of people deciding to do it. You can be frustrated your sport didn't happen for a few days. I get that. And you can turn away from that sport, and maybe it would stop the political statements that happen in certain worlds if they wind up damaging the product too much. But that's all something that plays out over time. So I thought it was very interesting, the protesting that took place, and even last night at the VMAs when The Weeknd won one of the biggest awards of the night and said that because of what's going on in the world, he really didn't even want to give a speech. That's fine. Those are fine versions of protesting to me. That's certainly peaceful protesting and peaceful raising awareness for a cause you feel is valuable. And if it financially impacts you, I guess you're just accepting that reality. I don't know if I've left enough time to talk about this story that's very different. It's a very big transition. I'm very amused by a news story over the weekend. This happened in Akron, Ohio. A woman purchased a bunch of products at a Save-A-Lot supermarket. She went home. She started to make herself dinner. And then she got very disturbed by one of the products that she purchased. So she decided that she had to do a lot of things. First, she had to call the supermarket and complain directly to them. And I believe there's audio of this available. I'm not going to play it because there's some censoring I couldn't really figure out how to do. Then she called the police. Yes, the police, to complain about the product she purchased at the supermarket. And then she went on Facebook Live and had several a conversation with, I think, friends and family where she recanted all the things that she said to the police while complaining about a product. What did she buy? Why, Collins, are you avoiding this so much? Well, among the things she purchased, and again, I am a juvenile, I'm a child, this is amusing to me, probably because of that. She bought some beans, she bought some stuff, she bought a steak. And she thought the steak looked kind of normal. She put it on the old grill to have it for the evening. And then while cooking the steak, she felt that it started to resemble something male that she was not happy with. And she kind of thought maybe the store had sold her something like that and not explained it. They said it was just, a steak, but what portion of the cow it came from became a huge issue of concern for her. I found it very funny that is one of the biggest concerns that a person would have and that they would call. And there is a 911 call, I think, too, that might be out there in the world for you to look at. But the store, the police, everyone had to very much set this woman at ease and let her know that the thing she bought was not the part of the cow that she was fearful it was. And actually, they had to tell her that that's not kind of a thing that they would do a lot. But the Facebook videos, which are still up and gone viral, certainly demonstrate that she doesn't exactly trust everybody. And she's still I don't think she ate the steak. To be honest, she seasoned it. She cooked it well. It looked like it was cooked great, but it wasn't consumed because of that concern. And come on. I mean, if we need to call the police over our fears in what part of the animal our steak came from, we can't possibly defund the police. They have to respond to issues as important as this one in Akron, Ohio. And I think I did a good job of avoiding the word. She said it so many times. She described things in ways that I did not want to do here on the radio. All right. We got a lot coming up. This is Craig Collins. I'm filling in on the Chad Benson Show. There are serious topics of conversation that I will have, conversations about the world in which we currently live and how hard it is for some politicians to describe to us why some things are bad and some things aren't, which just doesn't make sense to a lot of us at all, but it's real and it's out there. And also very big debates right now as to why Joe Biden feels it is important to all of a sudden start campaigning again in person after just a week ago saying that he wasn't. This is Craig Collins on the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in with you today. Let's start where so many people are discussing things happening over the weekend in Portland, Oregon, where a man was killed, a man who was of a counter-protest, supporting a counter-protest going on in the area. There's video of this moment, and actually a lot of discussion as to how even the person was shot. I guess there were back and forth arguments first, and then maybe pepper spray was used on both sides, and then inevitably one man lost his life. That man being a supporter of some of the right-leaning side of things, to say the very least, but certainly a very tragic event, and one of yet another example of ways in which a protest turns into something very different than a protest. Kenosha, Wisconsin, another example of that. And there needs to be more done. First, before we get to any of the political reactions, though, I would like to play probably the most disturbing audio that's come from this event over the weekend. It would be people that are involved in the protest, the Portland rally, celebrating the death of an individual, or at least saying that they in no way, shape, or form felt bad that the person died because of who he was, because of what side of the political aisle he was on. There is some censoring to this audio, but here is someone speaking into a microphone to other protesters who then cheer. as she reveals the news that the person who died was a counter-protester and that the person who died supported specific groups. This is what that sounds like.
And tonight, I just got word. The person who died was a Patriot person. He was a Nazi. Our community held its own and took out the trash. I am not going to shed any tears over a Nazi.
Our side protected its own and took out the trash. I just want that to sink in for a second, that there's people publicly rallying together, supporting in some ways very valuable things, supporting tremendously valuable things like equal treatment and equal rights for all individuals, no matter what they look like, no matter where they come from. Those are all valuable things. They then celebrate someone's death because of who they are, because of what side of the aisle they're on, because of the things that describe them. I don't understand how it's difficult for any politician anywhere to condemn these individuals, to condemn the people that behave this way. I don't get it. After playing it earlier on today and then listening to it again and really hopefully having it soak in for those listening to the show today, and honestly for myself, it is surreal to think that there is a challenge at all on any side of the political aisle to say that this is wrong. And I know that that's changed in the last few days. I know that there's some conversations taking place, and even presidential candidate Joe Biden tonight will speak again, in public, I guess, after taking a call from the National Guard over the weekend about the violence and how it needs to be stopped. But this is all also getting blamed on Trump by a lot of the individuals who just ignored it. The media groups who ignored things like looting and things way beyond protesting, the violence that took place, the rioting that took place, damage to businesses. There was a lot of social media mentions of how you care more about things than people if you're upset about looting and rioting, and if you're not part of the solution as far as the bigger issues that are trying to be addressed by those who are peacefully protesting. If you're in support of those that say that police are necessary, then you're an enemy to them. Then if you're a counter protester, you deserve to die, is essentially what that statement is from this protester and the group that then cheer and applaud that. It is surreal that this is our country that I'm talking about. It is surreal that the audio that I'm playing today comes from people who live in any part of the United States of America and feel that strongly about harming those that oppose them ideologically. It just makes no sense. And I believe the same to be true. I just want to make sure that people don't hear me at all being one-sided here of the people who were killed in Kenosha by a counter-protester who brought a gun to a rally. I believe that all of it is wrong. I, however, do agree that there needs to be a way to prevent things like this from being possible in the first place. There needs to be a way to have a presence, to have the National Guard, to have whoever is there necessary to make both sides feel as though it's not something that they would possibly get away with to harm or kill someone on the opposing side of a protest. This just makes no sense that it's taken this long to be condemned by anyone. And Biden will speak today, and his campaign says that he will talk quite a bit about these issues, about how violence is inappropriate, even though he had an opportunity 2 weeks ago to do that and chose not to on a national stage. He will do it this evening. And it is because, and I see this as a take on Axios, his campaign feels he might be losing ground with voters as far as the law and order issues go. Of course, you're losing ground if you refuse to address these kind of issues. They make absolutely no sense to not be condemned. That is the most serious I will be today, a day in which I want to resist being serious if I can, because news is so often right now just not something that you can tolerate for very long. And yet it is, to me, inescapable to not discuss that today. There has been some reaction to it. And just in general, the amount of violence that exists. Lara Trump spoke over the weekend as well about the difference between Democrats and Republicans as far as this issue is concerned. Let's hear from her a bit.
Well, that is never something that any of us would want to see happen. Absolutely not. I think, unfortunately, it looks really bad, specifically for Joe Biden and the Biden campaign, because, Chris, you might remember that it took him about 3 months to finally come out and condemn this violence and say that people should stop doing it. The president from day one has been saying this, and I'll reiterate what I just said in my last answer to you, which is that the president has said, I have federal resources available to every mayor in every city across this country. We don't want violence in our streets. We want to keep people safe. If you don't have safety in your communities, what do you have? Nothing else matters.
There's no way to argue with any points. There's no way to make this a political conversation. I guess just like they're on the left trying to say that the president was late to respond to the coronavirus issue, and that cost lives, that cost American people. A lot of the health things that we are struggling with now are directly because the president, according to the left, struggled to address that issue better. And yet with this issue, the president couldn't have been farther in front of everyone. Literally, I think everyone on the issue, and condemning it and saying things like you needed to have a National Guard presence to prevent something like this from happening again. And it's only now, after tragedy takes place and makes news, that people eventually agree with this individual. There are so many examples of moments in which the president of the United States has made a valuable decision to help people that is changed utterly by the coverage of him in the news and the coverage of him and the disagreements with him by the other side of the political aisle. And a very different, very mild example of this as well is the unemployment payments that will start going out to individuals in some states that the president took executive order action in order to create for all of the states, for all of the people that were waiting for other politicians to make a decision as far as stimulus goes, as far as support of an unprecedented amount of the unemployed goes. That is a decision he made on his own. If it had been a previous administration, the amount of celebration for it would have been surreal. And yet it was actually condemned in a lot of ways when it happened, much like banning flights to certain areas, much like a lot of the decisions that get made. And when they inevitably turn out to be valuable decisions, which absolutely the discussions of having a way in which to protect individuals at rallies by having a police presence there, having a National Guard presence there, that is now going to be a much more, I believe, accepted on both sides of the aisle form of adding and helping keep things safe in communities. It was derided for months by sides of the political aisle and certainly by politicians and by the media. So it's just surreal to hear that audio and to think about where we're at as a society and why it's so challenging sometimes to address some of these things in certain ways. I mean, even just if you listen to campaign manager of the Biden campaign who spoke with Chris Wallace over the weekend, you hear several examples of ways in which everything is Trump's fault, which again is also something that for a while Democrats complained about when their guy was in office, that everything couldn't possibly be the president's fault. But now apparently everything is the president's fault, trying to even shift the blame of violence onto the president himself, which is surreal to me. But let's hear a few moments of that conversation from Chris Wallace and the Biden campaign manager, because I just think it's surreal that these are the conversations we're having and that it's so difficult still for some people on certain sides of the political aisle to just answer questions and to have honest conversation about some things.
Just 1 week ago, Joe Biden said that he was going to continue his very limited in-person campaigning.
Can you win a presidential election from home?
We will. We're going to follow the science, what the scientists tell us.
Has the science changed that dramatically in 1 week?
That is a touchdown question, first and foremost. I just got to be honest about that again. That is a touchdown question. Has the science changed in a week now that Biden will start making public appearances, just like the president is making? Has there been a dramatic shift in our understanding of things? The answer is no. The answer given is...
Those two things are not mutually exclusive, Chris. From the outset, we have followed the science. We have followed the public health guidelines. We have held socially distant, responsible events with people wearing masks, with people taking the proper precautions. Obviously,
but answer my question,
very
Kate.
Clear contrast.
He said a week ago that he could win the election from home. He was asked that. He said, we'll follow the science. Now he's going to go on a big campaign trip.
That's just disingenuous, Chris.
Actually, what it is a reflection of the fact that a week ago he thought he was slam dunk winning. And now based on the things going on and the conversations coming from the right side, the Republican side of the aisle. The presidential candidate for the Democrats, Joe Biden, feels he has to get out in public and he has to make statements that are contrarian to things he said a little while ago because, well, it's no longer benefiting him politically and potentially as far as his election campaign goes if he continues to have the same feelings he had before. And one last quick thing, and then I do have to take a break. Kamala Harris is a problematic human to have in your corner right now because she did do things like support funds that bailed people out of prison early on in the protesting, early on in the arresting happening after rioting and looting, because she felt that that was an important cause to get behind. And just a couple months ago, this is now circulating again on social media. I believe she was on the Stephen Colbert program, and she said that the protesting would not stop. It would not slow down at all. This is odd audio now when you look at the world in which it's been a lot more than just peaceful protesting that's happened and a lot of silence from media and that side of the aisle as far as the negative things happening until finally there has sadly been enough horrific actions for them to start to notice and have a conversation about it. Really, truthfully, again, because it looks like the polls are starting to reflect that difference in opinion of the American people and for whatever reason, the politicians. But here is Kamala Harris from a couple months ago talking about how the protesting was utterly important and was going to continue. And then remember, also creating funds to help support those legally who were getting arrested for breaking the law.
They're not going to stop. And this is a movement. I'm telling you, they're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not. And we should not.
I got to be honest. I know that she's talking about peaceful protesting. I'm not trying to use her comments completely out of context, but then you actually help fund to get people out of things like getting arrested. It's very confusing. And this is the reason that we're seeing so much violence. It's not because of the president, who people are going to say it's because everything's his fault. It's because there was silence for so long by so many as far as the actual dangers that were taking place on the streets. They were being ignored because the cause is valuable. But the way in which you gain attention to the cause is also relevant to the conversation. And anyone who says that you can't talk about both, the cause itself being worthy, but the way in which the execution of getting attention was not okay, was criminal, and needs to be very easily condemned, it's just ridiculous. This is Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. We're going to get more fun in just a bit.
No fake outrage here, just the real thing. The Chad Benson Show.
This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. Chad is on a much-deserved vacation. He will be back next week. United Airlines is going to allow you to change your flights, and they're going to do it for free. They're scrapping their $200 charge for any domestic airline changes, any flight changes, because, well, they understand that flexibility might be valuable right now, first and foremost, and second, maybe all the airlines being hit as hard as they are by tough financial times would make you more interested in flying United if you can book a flight and then change the actual flight based on, I guess, whatever could come up in your life, a lot of different things. But it was a $200 privilege before. It's being scrapped. You would have to pay $75 to change on the same day, though. So that's just a little statement out there. I think the flexibility by airlines might be tremendously important here. And I honestly do see this as being something that might make you more likely to book a flight and potentially travel somewhere for need or other reasons because of the flexibility of knowing that you're not going to get hammered financially if you wind up changing your mind for any reason. So we'll see if other airlines follow suit. Southwest Airlines, did also already do this. So maybe that's why United is choosing to do it. And there are some ways where flying was just financially, not awesome. If some of that stuff changes, at least for the time being, I can see it being a huge win for a lot of places. I had mentioned this story earlier and forgot to pay it off. There was a guy in Australia who went viral for offering his parenting services to anyone that's in need. He actually mainly focused on any deadbeat dads out there who weren't providing the valuable things that dads can provide to their kids, on social media. His tweets all went viral. A lot of people cracking up at just what he said he was willing to offer. A lot of services included instructed learning of valuable skills such as car maintenance and lawn mowing, as well as school drop-offs and pickups. He said, if you're tired of playing games, this is the guy Jake on social media, do you have issues where your spouse, your significant other, whoever it is putting things ahead of your kids, get yourself a rent-a-daddy. Has your baby daddy been acting up? Well, get yourself a rent-a-daddy. Trying out a new career move to get away from all the different things that he's been doing before. He is now very excited about the successful rent-a-daddy program that he's putting out there in the world. This is funny and yet also a little bit based in truth. There are a lot of studies that say, male influence is tremendously valuable to the outcomes of children. And so maybe this becomes a real thing. It's a $30 an hour fee plus a $20 surcharge for Sundays, I guess, after 4 p.m. He will do all kinds of different stuff, including dinner dates that are payable by you or some other, form of working out an agreement, I guess, is mentioned as well. But Jake is there to help out in any way that he can. He has gone viral, as I said, on social media because a lot of people found it both interesting, funny, and honestly, maybe somewhat valuable. Finally, a guy stole a school bus and drove it 275 miles away. The reason he got caught, though, he parked the school bus at his house. I don't try to help criminals all the time, but if you're going to steal a school bus, don't park it at the house. This is the Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in throughout the country. We're in all different situations, I guess, as far as what is and isn't open. New Jersey is very happy that they're going to start reopening indoor dining, and yet in California, there is a new color-coded tier system that is put in place effective today that will slow things down. It says simple, also slow, as far as the description from the Democratic governor there in California. Newsom also says that they didn't put in a green tier because they don't believe that there's a green light that says go back to the way things were or back to the pre-pandemic mindset at all. That actually leaves out any sort of establishments that have live event audiences like professional sports, any theater, any concert venues, not at all addressed in the 4-tier system. Purple, the most restrictive color of all 4 colors listed here, will be in place in a majority of the counties that exist in California, and only a few will be in the lighter shades like the red, orange, and yellow tiers, with very, very few counties being in the yellow tier, which is the closest to open as possible. This is to address widespread continued outbreaks of COVID-19, and also obviously going to be a huge impact on the economy and those who can't really operate their businesses the way they intend to do so. 38 of the 58 counties within the state, including Los Angeles and nearly every other large county, will begin in that purple. And as I said, only 3 will begin in the yellow phase. This is all over the place. There actually is also some now advocating for something called herd immunity, which essentially means that we live with the world in which we have right now. We hope that there becomes some sort of immunity, or that there is already maybe more than we understand immunity to COVID-19 because of its spread, and that may be a better way to handle what's going on right now. We got to be honest, at least a little bit. No matter where you're located within this country, things were shut down, things have reopened, and in some places, they're not really that much better. They've gotten bad again as far as the amount of outbreak goes. A lot of young people getting the virus, a lot of hospital capacity, way more available than we thought months and months ago in a lot of the places that are seeing outbreaks. Some, that's not true, but a majority it is, that places can handle the amount of positive cases because a lot of them are milder than we expect. And yet, just wanted to update you on the stark difference between the East and West Coast right now and a couple of the bigger places handling this. And I don't know, what I guess is going to be another huge campaign conversation as we have seen already and as is going to be moving forward up until we get to a place where eventually, I guess, this will all hopefully be behind us. I want to shift gears and talk about some sillier things as I've been doing throughout the day. Elon Musk, who may also be a real-life supervillain, at least to me. Elon Musk is the lead of Tesla, and at times, some of the conversations he's had make me believe that if ever a comic book villain were to come to life, it might be this guy. It might be Bezos. He, over the weekend, demonstrated that he has a Neuralink device that was effective and it worked in pigs. The company announced that it successfully installed the linked hardware into the brain of some of the pigs in one case, removed the device without causing any obvious problems whatsoever. The test subjects were presented at the event, even if they weren't always cooperative, which is a little weird. Links seemed to successfully read signals generated by the neurons within the brains of said pigs. Musk once again said that the pie-in-the-sky promise about tech that would be installed in your brain is coming. The biggest advance that they have seen in this is the prototype V2, the surgical robot that helps to sew, that is correct, sew a 5-micron-wide electrode device into the subject's brain so that you can use it for, I don't know, controlling your Tesla, whatever you want. Look, I'm a fan. I know I'm in the minority here. I'm just gonna accept it. I'm a fan of some technology advancements, of some things happening. And if there were ever a day to have a RoboCop exist in the real world, I may volunteer to be said RoboCop. But when you talk about sewing something into my brain that comes from a guy like Elon Musk, I'm not sure I'm exactly psyched about that. I wonder if you are. And then when it says that they used pigs who were not necessarily cooperative, that sounds even scarier to me as far as what this can and can't do. But I guess it was just identifying tasty smells and treats that were being presented to the animal and mapping the brain effectively and allowing maybe pets to communicate, which I'm also a huge fan of. If dogs can start talking, our lives all get better immediately because those conversations would be the best conversations. And yet this display over the weekend, it caused some concerns, probably not just for me. I also saw that a peanut butter and jelly sandwich sold for a record amount of money, which I don't understand. A Chicago restaurant has a single sandwich that costs a whopping $350. The owner of PB&J, which apparently stands for Pizza, Beak, and Jukebox, it doesn't have anything to do with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's a very odd name for a restaurant, decided to make a very expensive sandwich. It's 24-karat gold toothpick, apparently, is part of the reason that it costs so much, which is just cheating, in all honesty. They decided to go with a better golden goose a recipe, a decadent feature that some of the finest ingredients in the world are born from, I guess. It is built around a whole loaf of bread that has gold dust baked into the flour, and it is edible gold leaf on the top. Why? Why right now does anyone need you to make how mad would someone get to see a person consume a $350 peanut butter and jelly sandwich that is gold crusted? I just imagine a lot of us would not have that go well. One last silly, interesting, weird story in the news that I gravitated toward because, well, that's who I am as a person. A Japanese company unveiled its prototype flying car to the public in a 4-minute test of its flight. This is Skydive Inc. They announced the successful test on social media. This is at the Toyota test facility in Toyota, Japan. The single-seat flying car, billed as the world's smallest electric vertical takeoff vehicle, which is a name I never thought I'd say, took flight for an entire 4 minutes. Now, see, they talk sometimes about the electric car running out of a charge while you're driving a great distance. They're going to need to make sure the battery on the flying car is 100% capable of whatever flight distance you're trying to travel, because I would feel very insecure of an idea that it was only capable for about 4 minutes. It resembles a motorcycle with 4 attached propellers, giving it the power of flight. The SD03, meaning there were 2 failed tests, is currently capable of flight of about 10 minutes, and the company is aiming to expand that to a 30-minute flight. Skydive said it is aiming for a commercially available version of this car by 2023. That is right. We have to live through the horrendousness that is 2020, and a few years from now, we will have flying electric vehicles. At least they'll be trying to make those vehicles available that have a 30-minute flight capability. Not really enough time to do a lot of things. And again, really important that you remember at all times to charge the vehicle after maybe you take your 20-minute commute to work in the air and then you try to go home. I hope that it slowly descends if it's not fully charged, but that was not mentioned in the test. Flying cars coming to the world in the next few years. We officially become, any of those crazy shows you saw on TV, any of the science fiction ones. The minute we have this, I don't know if it's going to be good that we have it, but I'm tremendously excited for that. Less so the device that gets sewn into my brain that maybe helps me control the Tesla version of this car. I don't know. It's all out there. It's all possible. 2020 has had breakthroughs, I guess, and these are some of them. One last quick story, actually, too. Disney World is going to allow all guests to wear Halloween costumes after it canceled its Not So Scary party. Traditionally, a lot of theme parks like Disney World would hold bigger events around Halloween that involve a lot of dressing up by the people who work there and a lot of celebrations. That's not going to be the place. No full-face masks or outfits that reach or drag on the ground are acceptable, I guess, according to their website. But everything else is fair game. The park will allow these guests to start wearing these costumes in September all the way through the end of October. Those who do manage to make it out to Disney parks for its Halloween celebration will still be met with some decorations and some other things, but not necessarily the full celebration that they got in the past. I feel really bad about the Halloween chances here. If Halloween doesn't happen, that's a holiday I like a lot, and I imagine a lot of kids like it a lot. So there's got to be a way around all this to fix it, and I guess just wearing costumes to the park or just dress like Lady Gaga at the VMAs. That looks like a Halloween costume, every outfit she puts on. So maybe just do that, and then you're protected and also fashionable, or at least I'm told you are. I'm not sure that I get it entirely. This is Craig Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. A lot more silliness in just a bit.
You go, boy.
This isn't about right or left. This is just about right and wrong.
Right you are, Chad. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. The New York Post is one of my favorite places to read all kinds of things because, well, the New York Post takes on the serious questions that a lot of us can't answer all the time. One of those, can I start an office romance while I work from home? That is the question being asked to the experts at the New York Post, and there is an answer there. But I thought this conversation was tremendously valuable in general, and I'd love your take on it on the Chad Benson social media pages because, again, I like to offer questions out there that'll confuse Chad when he comes back from vacation. What was Craig talking about? Can you start an office romance if you don't work in the office anymore? That is the reason why I guess the question is even being posed. It's not like there's the awkwardness that could exist within the office space. A lot of companies might allow you to work at home indefinitely. So can you date those you work with and maybe, I assume, meet up with them in real life if, there's no longer an office building at all? The answer from the New York Post is kind of, I guess, is really the position they're taking on this. It might not break work rules or office rules. It might break them because I don't think a lot of places truly intend to be building free for the future entirely. I think eventually you got to go back in there. Just honestly, though, think of the awkwardness of those group meetings, those group chats. If you wind up breaking up with someone that you kind of sort of dated in the work world, and now you have to be on a conference call with them, I imagine it's still not a fun time for the companies, but right now the New York Post is saying maybe, sort of, kind of. Another question asked to them was by an individual who had 7 different meetings to try to get a job, partially because, well, some of these interviews can happen via the internet, via Zoom or what have you, that it's easier for maybe more people to get involved in the hiring process. And this person wants to know, can they just tell the company enough is enough and say, I'm not doing any more of these follow-up interviews and you got to make a decision? I imagine that means you won't get the job, in my opinion. But yeah, you can say whatever you want about enough being enough. I haven't heard a lot of this, but it does kind of make sense to maybe drag your feet a bit more in the hiring process or maybe have more people involved, since the way in which you're interacting with someone is via a video conference and maybe not necessarily an in-person meeting until it gets tremendously serious. But 7 does sound like a tad too many. All right, let's move on to other rapid-fire silly news things that I saw. Some friends are very excited about an invention they've made. It's a $45 invention. It is a bathing suit for men that they're calling the Brokini. This comes on the heels of a lot of other inventions in the bikini world. I think the Trikini being one of the more recent ones that included a mask option. This is a la Borat, if you've ever seen that movie. It's a mankini. It sells for $45. People seem to enjoy the idea of it on social media, so it has gone a tad viral, but no one's buying this. Let's be completely honest. Any of these times that people try to reinvent the I guess, sexy, for lack of a better word, attire on the male body, it usually winds up failing because it's just not the same thing. These guys who excelled in high school, they said on their social media page, and found themselves, joking about the idea of a brokini, think that it's going to be a wonderful thing to put out there in the world because it covers up the areas it most needs to cover up while still Oh, I can't read the rest of this description. No, but they went to business school, and this is the idea they came up with after business school, was to sell this product $45. It ships internationally because they're not located in the United States. So if you're interested, if you want one, don't worry, they can get it to you. Again, I think their idea probably will go viral. Their sales, I don't see them skyrocketing. I also thought this was interesting. Toni Braxton did an interview recently. Toni is now 52 years old, and she said when she was younger, she missed out on a lot of things. She actually has a message for those who are young. She said, you're wasting your time. You need to do more partying. She was more specific about the things you should do that I'm just going to call partying here, but she'd like to see a great increase in the amount of friends that you're making. Again, I'm being somewhat liberal in how I'm discussing that. You should also have more alcohol. You should drink more. You should party more. And if you are one of those that does this, or I guess if it's a place where it's legal, you should also just smoke more. She says that's the biggest regret of her life, is not partying and having more fun when she was younger. She said, I think my religious upbringing stopped me from doing a lot of the things I should have done. It's not good. It's not a good look at the age that I am now to get those things out of the way. So Toni Braxton telling us that we should party more. I'm not sure that scientists agree with that take right now, but that's fine. Thank you, Toni, for weighing in. Another story that I saw I thought was interesting. This is out of Montana. People there had to clean out a sewage system. And while cleaning out a sewage system, they found what they described, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to say it. They described as a poop-soaked phone. That is the words they used in their press release, people. I am just reporting the news to you. It still works. They found it at the bottom of a sewage system. They don't know when and how it got lost, and they're willing to return it to the owner. Do not take this phone back. I can't tell you with any more sincerity in my heart that my advice to the owner of the phone is to 100% reject the ability to get it back, maybe have it burned and destroyed. Do not take it. I don't know how it got so deep in the sewage system in the first place, how it was the kind of thing that had to be found like that. There were even voicemails on it, I guess, from the owner. So we are fairly certain that it does, it's identifiable who it was, but don't. The A1 Sanitation said on their Facebook page that they'd like to see it make its way home. And again, they called it what they did. There's no chance. I don't care what it is. It could be a brand new iPhone or whatever the fancy thing the kids use nowadays are. It could be one that still has Fortnite on it, which is selling for thousands of dollars. Reject the offer. Pretend it's not yours, even if there's voicemails on it. Do not go that direction. Also in the news, a grandmother was showing off her McDonald's hamburger. This is a true story. She did it on social media because it's 24 years old. And as McDonald's is not very happy with the continued stories like this, it looks the same as the day she purchased it. The grandma has gone viral on social media, specifically on TikTok again, for doing this. She said a month or so ago that it never rotted, never decayed when she first started sharing about it. She originally purchased the burger in 1996 because of an advertisement of NASCAR races, and then just decided to save it. We've got to help McDonald's have things that actually decay. It's the weirdest challenge for a company, especially a restaurant, that's ever existed. But this isn't the only occurrence like this. This isn't the only time they've had a burger last this long and not at all look different than the way in which it was bought, except maybe be, very, very difficult to crack or break, because I imagine it's quite a hard product at this point. But yeah, this is yet another one of those, and a viral grandmother on social media. Also, there was a $300,000 heist that took place in California that caught my eye, because the thing stolen was pistachio nuts. $300,000 worth of nuts were taken from a processing facility earlier in the month. Police finally cracked the case. Pun very intended when they found the stash location. But my only question, and I don't intend to continue to help criminals do a better job committing crimes, what was the goal to sell the nuts here? Like, were you going to hawk these on the street? Is that how that was going to go in California? You're going to have guys approach you in alleys like, hey, man, what's your pistachios at? How you doing there? You need some more? I've got a bunch. I got access. I can hook you up with as many as you need. This is a very strange thing to take. It's valued at just $60,000. It seems like the effort to get that many pistachios away and all these stolen items that I guess have originally took place there. And the value actually, by the way, is these two stolen trailers and all the other items along with the $300,000 in pistachios. It just seems like the effort isn't worth it, man. And the fact that you still have most of the stash a month later kind of proves my point. The Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
This is the Chad Benson Show.